The best way for me to describe to you where America is right now when it comes to gun violence and reform is to use the 5 stages of grief. We've been in denial about our gun problem. We've been angered by Congress's inability to pass any substantive gun legislation for almost 3 decades. And now we're in the bargaining stage. This is the make or break moment, folks. This week, the House is in the process of passing gun reform bills that include a red flag law that would temporarily take away the firearms from those who are considered a harm to themselves or others. It's already being used in 19 states. And the Protecting the Kids Act, which would include measures like raising the minimum age from 18 to 21 for buying a semi-automatic rifle and banning the import, manufacture, and possession of high-capacity magazines. Democratic Congressman David Cicilline, who sits on the House Judiciary Committee, had this to say on CNN last night.
These proposals are supported by 90, 85% of the American people. Something is fundamentally broken when the vast majority of Americans are demanding this action and the Republicans in the Senate still prevent it from happening.
And that's the problem. These bills will go to the Senate next, and we know how that song goes. It just ends. At the moment, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy is leading a bipartisan negotiation effort with 8 other senators, including conservative Democrat Joe Manchin and Republicans like Pat Toomey, who has expressed a lot of optimism. Toomey told CBS's Face the Nation he hopes the bipartisan effort will get half of Republicans on board, not just the 10 needed to override the filibuster. That should be the goal here, he said. We're going to have to be realistic about what that can do. Well, that's the key right there. What's realistic in the Senate? Already, the key proposals outlined by President Biden, an assault weapons ban, restrictions on high-capacity magazines, and universal background checks, those are off the table. Things like the red flag laws and strengthening current background checks are being considered. But that doesn't mean they'll make the final draft. All eyes are on Senator John Cornyn right now. The Texas Republican is top-rated by the NRA, and he's the leading GOP negotiator working alongside the core bipartisan group. How he plays his party's bargaining chip will be critical. Both Cornyn and Murphy say a deal could be reached as soon as this week, but there's no denying the Democrats have started from a position of weakness. They've already conceded some of the key measures many Americans widely support. So in this critical bargaining stage of our collective grief on gun violence in America, what stages come next? Depression and then acceptance over our lawmakers' inability to act again? Or can we break that cycle? Joining me now is Democratic Senator from Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin. Senator, it's such a real pleasure having you. The mood right now around this bipartisan committee seems to be hopeful, right? How do you feel about it? Are you optimistic that this bill is going to make it through to a final bill?
I am. But I will start by saying that I was in strong agreement with the elements that President Biden had outlined in his remarks in the wake of the tragedy in Uvalde. And I would like to see a lot of those issues get debated and remain on the table. But we know it's now narrowed to a smaller number of provisions. But, just as you say that people have been disappointed before, if we can make a move to expand background checks, to include these red flag laws that would temporarily remove firearms from an individual who is a danger to themselves or others deemed by a court. If we can take some solid steps in that regard, I think not only do we make progress, but we also boost confidence that we could take further steps along the way.
Well, making progress is a big part of this, because one of the things we know isn't going to make the final draft of the Senate bill is a ban on assault-style rifles, even though President Biden called for it and a majority of Americans support it. So I'd like you to take a listen to this clip from Senator Joe Manchin speaking to CNN's Manu Raju yesterday.
Do you think that there should be a ban on assault weapons, ban on AR-15s?
Talking about bans, I wouldn't have a problem on looking at some of these things. What is the necessity? Tell me what the purpose is, and let's use them for those purposes.
Now, Manchin's a conservative Democrat on that bipartisan committee is asking, what's the purpose of banning AR-15s? What's your response to that? Is it a necessity at this point?
You know, I think that we had a successful ban of these sort of weapons of war some years ago. And unfortunately, it was allowed to sunset, and we haven't had the political calculus here to reinstate that ban. But I believe that it would be consistent with the Second Amendment. And I know that there's strong support for such a measure. And, you know, there are a number of things, including just raising the age of ownership that would be also a step in the right direction, although certainly not as bold as making sure that we ban those weapons outside of the context of war.
So Senator, the reality of it is there are roadblocks all around this thing because, you know, the next one could be John Cornyn's role in these negotiations. He's been given an A+ rating by the NRA, and we know his history when it comes to bipartisan talks like this. He will talk the talk and then pull out at the last minute, blaming Democrats for what doesn't happen. One activist group came up with a noodle name for it, the Cornyn Con. How is a senator like Cornyn going to influence the group's final proposal here? How does that impact how these negotiations ultimately play out?
Well, I think it comes down to whether they can pull together 10. It doesn't include him if there's a consensus reached on a package this week. But I think that Senator Cornyn has been very reluctant to take bold steps, and he represents the state where this massacre occurred. And you have to think that the people of the state of Texas are going to have some impact. Too many of my Republican colleagues have been beholden to the gun manufacturers and the NRA. They need to be beholden to their constituents. And boy, our constituents are pleading with us, are screaming at us to do something. Do something. And it may be a compromise, but inaction is not acceptable.
So speaking of state action, you have states like New York that just passed stronger gun reforms yesterday, including raising the age limit to own semi-automatic weapons. Should Americans stop looking to the nation's capital and start looking at their state capitals? They can play a very active role here, don't you think?
They can, and some legislatures have used those powers for good. And I would say in my home state of Wisconsin, our legislature in recent years has moved in the opposite direction. And we are not immune to these acts of gun violence. I can tell you that it's kind of epidemic right now in parts of our state. And we had a mass shooting event last week at a funeral, at a burial. This is, we see it firsthand. And so, yes, it's going to work in some states. They're going to step forward and do the right thing. But we can't assume that all states are going to take the action that we need to see.
So here's the rub of all of this, Senator. At the end of the day, you're speaking to millions of Americans who've made it very clear they support broad gun reforms, ones backed by the president, like universal background checks, a ban on AR-15s and red flag laws. And they see a final draft coming out of Washington that cuts these substantive measures out. What do you tell them? What do you say to them? Why in the last 3 decades almost have we not been able to get something done substantively in this space? What do you say to those Americans?
Well, I mean, there have been minor laws passed. The fix the NICS system for making sure that all crimes and misdemeanors are loaded onto that system when they are doing background checks. But again, those are minor steps. I think we must press forward, and we have to continue to do so. And if we do not get 60 senators on a measure that's supported overwhelmingly by the voters of this nation, then at least the voters can see where their senators stand and take action accordingly at the polls.
Senator, I can't let you go without just a little bit of politics, right? So how do you see Democrats messaging this narrative going into the fall campaign, given other big issues, abortion and some other decisions by the Supreme Court coming down? Where does this gun safety message resonate with voters from the Democratic perspective?
Well, here, I think that I suspect this election is going to be predominantly about the economy. And on the economy, it's Democrats who are taking action to try to lower prices, to try to make families be able to make ends meet. Republicans, by and large, aren't putting forth proposals. They're just complaining. And I do think that on these issues that you just raised, where so much hope was placed on this Congress, knowing that there was a Democratic majority in each House, what it shows is in the Senate, we need more. And right, and you know, whether that's voting rights, whether that's you know, trying to codify Roe versus Wade, or whether it's on this issue, and voters are going to see where their senators stand on these issues, because we've had the votes and we've seen that it is Democrats who are standing on the side of the people, fighting for safer streets and safer schools, fighting to lower prices, fighting to make sure that women don't take a half-century step backwards if the Supreme Court does indeed overturn Roe versus Wade. It's been Democrats who've been fighting for these, you know, to secure these rights and to have a safer country.